Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk, where our goal is to engage, inspire, and empower the global community of risk practitioners. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and today I'm super excited to welcome my guest, Priyanka Murawala. She is an expert in biological evaluation of medical devices with more than 20 years of industry experience. In her consulting practice, she helps medtech clients in developing strategies for biological evaluation and preparation of toxicological risk assessment. So I can't wait to have this conversation with Priyanka. With that, I welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Naveen. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you are joining this. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me here.
So, Priyanka, I know you recently moved from Germany to Maine, and that too a small island of the coast of Maine. Tell us a little bit about what that experience was, and what you like there right now.
Moving from Germany to Maine was a big move for us, the whole family, because we have been living in Germany for 10 years and we were kind of feeling comfortable and being like we were living in Dresden, east of Germany, and we were feeling that this is our new home. Like when we moved from India to Germany, Germany was our new home, but then we moved to US and there was a big cultural difference that we were facing when we moved in like 4.5 years ago. But
Mhm.
the place where we moved in is a small island called Bar Harbor, where Acadia National Park is. It is very
Mhm.
beautiful. It has national park, mountains, ocean, rivers. So the place is really beautiful to live in. Though we have harsh winter, like for sure.
Yes.
So it is.
Yes.
It is like you get everything here. Nice summer, nice fall and spring season, and harsh winter.
Oh, that's great. And it takes a little bit to get used to any new environment, new place, and I hope you are having fun there. So, Priyanka, let's jump into our conversation today, and we're going to talk about biocompatibility and risk assessments for toxicology and biocompatibility for medical devices. And I know you have a lot of experience in this area. But first off, I want to start our conversation by asking you what's going on with ISO 10993. We are hearing that it's being updated. Do you have any latest information on
Yeah. So ISO one, which is like a big standard which gives you an idea how to do the risk assessment of medical devices from the biocompatibility or biological safety of the materials and the manufacturing processes which are used in the manufacturing of medical devices. So it is going to be updated. It is under the process of update. I have listened to a webinar provided by Tor Rollins and Nicholas from Nelson's lab couple of weeks ago, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they have given an update like what are the major changes happening, which is the latest update will be focusing on foreseeable misuse of the device
it?
and the cumulative use of the devices. So yeah, there are some. I have not yet read the standard, so I cannot give lots of insights into it, but I can recommend that you can go and listen to this webinar, or there is a webinar which is going to be hosted by Device Talks next week, which is like updates. And the topic of the webinar is updates to ISO 10993-1, focus on foreseeable misuse. And it's again given by Nelson Labs experts. So you can go and hear that webinar as well,
Sure.
which will be
And
very fruitful. Yeah.
and what we can do, guys, is that we can share a link to this upcoming webinar in the comments for this event page. So thank you for sharing that, Priyanka. You mentioned foreseeable misuse and what I'm guessing cumulative exposure to a device as some of the key areas of attention in this new update. That's pretty interesting to me because reasonably foreseeable misuse is a very important element of risk analysis under ISO 14971. So it's good for me to see that it's being realized across the board in different standards committees that, hey, it's an important thing to highlight. Now, one area that I'm really curious to hear your views on, since you have experience in both the EU and the US regulatory environment, what are
Yeah.
some differences that you have come across from a regulatory perspective when it comes to expectations around biological evaluation?
Yeah. FDA has its own FDA guidance document on the biocompatibility and safety evaluation of the medical devices, and the European Union have their own ISO 10993-1 standard. So initially, these two standards were not in alignment. But when the latest standards were published, like ISO 10993-1 in 2018, and FDA's guidance document was recently updated in 2023. So what happened was that all the standards were now aligned, but I have still seen that there are a different way that these two different regulatory bodies, or these two countries like EU and US, are taking approach to evaluate the biocompatibility of the devices. What I have seen in European Union is that there they are more animal friendly. They
Mm-hmm.
don't follow the checkbox approach, while here what I have seen by like FDA, they really go like one checkbox at a time, like step
Mm-hmm.
by step, all the checkboxes, and they want them to be addressed, and mostly they want it to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
So EU is going more towards in vitro testing, like if animal testing can be, if we have a chance that we don't have to do animal testing, and the same endpoints can be addressed by in vitro testing. So they
Mm-hmm.
are taking that approach, but here FDA, it doesn't still doesn't recognize such kind of in vitro testing approach. They are still accepting animal testing as the valid testing. So
That
that's
is interesting.
yeah.
Interesting for me to hear that it's more like we are testing to
Mhm.
ensure biocompatibility rather than taking a risk based approach to
Yes.
ensure we have mitigated or controlled the risks of non biocompatibility. And in fact, I'm stumbling with my words here, Priyanka, because personally, I found this very difficult in my mind to reconcile. Actually, we want our devices to be biocompatible. So the risk is not that the devices will be biocompatible, but the risk is that devices will be non biocompatible, right?
Yes.
So, in a way, I've struggled with this notion that rather than focusing on non biocompatibility and controlling the risks of that, we seem to be focused on testing for biocompatibility, which is to me, and I'm no expert in this area, but it has not really made that much sense to me. And what I'm hearing you say is that traditionally we have followed a very checklist based approach and a testing based approach. And perhaps I'm hoping that with the 10993-1 update now, there'll be a little bit more focus on the risk side. I'm
Yes.
hoping that, right?
Me too.
Okay, so I'm just sharing with you how I have felt about this whole topic. And I remain very curious to learn about biocompatibility, biological evaluation from folks like you who have so much experience. Now, let's share a couple of examples of some key challenges that you have come across when it comes to presenting information for biological evaluation. Can you share some of the common challenges that you have come across?
The question is like, in what sense? Is it like
in
to do
in
the
terms of yeah, in terms of like really convincing the regulatory authorities that we have done all we could to mitigate or control the risk of what I call
yeah.
non biocompatibility.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes, the biggest challenge is that, as I said, that FDA, I'm talking with respect to the FDA.
Mhm.
So what FDA wants is like if a device is, for example, stents. So a stent which is going to be implanted in the blood vascular system. And so there are a list, according to FDA's guidance document, there are a list of tests that needs to be done. So sometimes you know that the stent is just a design change of the previously marketed devices by the same manufacturer. When we are doing the risk assessment, okay, these are the design changes which are substantial, and substantial in the sense that it will pose risk to the patient safety. So we have to do certain amount of tests, but the ISO standard, for example, says do 10 tests. Okay, the ISO standard or FDA guidance document never says that you have to do the test, but they recommend that you have to do 10 tests. But then when you see that the device changes is not substantial, so you can do just minimum testing just to address the risk coming from the changes that has been implemented on the device. But even then, when we do the minimum amount of tests and go for submission, so we get a pushback from the regulatory bodies that no, you have to do more testing because the standard says something and you're not doing it, or you prove lots of evidence which can show that there are no risks from the device.
So it seems to me again the focus is on testing to ensure that device is safe rather than taking a little bit more risk based approach. And I hope that these new conversations and updates in the standards focus us to think more about risk rather than just testing things out. Great.
What I would also like to add it over here is like it's not like always the focus on the testing. It's just that I can understand the reviewer's perspective as well, because they want to be very sure that the devices that will be put on the market and will be used on the patient are really safe. So as we think that, so what we do is like we as the risk assessor, we try to do is like we try to mitigate all the risks, and it can be either by literature research, by the available clinical data, preclinical data, and everything, and try to and some the tests that we do. So we try to have all the information gathered and try to do the risk assessment. But I can understand that the reviewers perspective as well, that they
Mhm.
really want to be sure that even though we have done all the risk mitigation, still
Yeah.
everything is safe or not. So
Got you. That's a good point. Now Roger is sharing a comment here. Is that seems to me in the early days of biocompatibility, the risk of foreseeable misuse was left to the device team. In my past, I don't remember any of the biocompatibility experts asking the team about foreseeable misuse with respect to biocompatibility. It has been over 10 years. So it seems like it's about time to have that conversation. And I'm hoping that when biocompatibility experts start talking about that, they become involved early on in the development process, which should help everybody, right? I think so. This could be actually very good idea and approach towards biological evaluation that we start talking about misuse, foreseeable misuse very early on, right?
yes, yeah, yes,
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Roger. And guys, I love this. This is what I love about our conversations, that we are learning from each other. We are sharing our own perspectives and insights. And that is why I have always shared with you that these conversations are not webinars or lectures. These are conversations where we all come together and share our own perspectives. So please continue to do that. And if you're just joining, my guest today is Priyanka Murawala, who is an expert in biological evaluation. And we're talking about this topic in the context of medical devices. So, Priyanka, let's continue. I think we wanted to also discuss today a little bit about some recent issues that we have come across from a biocompatibility point of view, especially recalls. Anything jumps out at you that is worth talking about today where biocompatibility was a major factor?
yeah, sure. So, just to give a bit of a background study that I did on the recall process and everything, like because
Mhm.
I am not mostly focused on the recall thing, but the biocom perspective of the recall, or the recall happening because of the biocompatibility issues.
Mhm.
So I was just going through the FDA's website. There is a web link where you can really see how many recalls have happened, have
Mhm.
had, yeah, in the last year. Like in 2024, I saw that 108 devices were they were confirmed to be recalled from the devices from the
Mhm.
market. And it's like it was really interesting to see that. Um, I an example, what I can, like, there are multiple examples, but I
Mhm.
would like to just discuss about few examples which have happened last year. So one of them was from Philips, sleep apnea and
Yes.
ventilators recall. Yeah,
Yes.
it was a major class 1 recall. Class 1 recall is the recall that happens when the product that is used on a patient can cause serious adverse health consequences, including death.
Mhm.
So the Philips recall was a big major recall, and they have to pull out lots of devices from the market. And what was happening here is like, so the patients were using sleep apnea machines and
Mhm.
ventilator, and then one of the components which was used to reduce the sound produced by the machine was made up of polyurethane foam. With time or over time, these foams were breaking down,
Mhm.
especially because of the exposure to hot or humid conditions. The patients were inhaling or swallowing these foam particles or their chemical byproducts, which was potentially leading to airway inflammation, lung damage, asthma, chest pressure, or coughing, or they were getting exposed to
Mhm.
toxic chemicals. Especially the degraded foam were releasing volatile organic compounds and
Mhm.
other toxic gases, which were causing like lots of side effects, including like long-term exposure were supposed to or were proposed to have liver or kidney damage or even carcinogenic.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so even these devices are like really important for patients' well-being, but at the same time, the materials are not made properly or the design device is not proper, then it can lead to
Yeah.
hazardous side effects.
And sometimes I feel like, of course, the hindsight is 2020. Now that we know
Mhm.
this happened, it seems to me that something like this we should be talking about very early on in our risk analysis, where we have cross-functional input and we are talking about reasonably foreseeable sequence of events, which is actually part of the requirement from 14971 of risk analysis. And my take on these things is that we learn from these past experiences and figure out how best we can improve our own current process. And it would seem to me that this point about involving biocomp experts early on in the risk analysis process can be helpful. Like they can help us visualize what might happen over time, what kind of environmental conditions may lead to this degradation. So I want us to really use these, and that's what I do on Let's Talk Risk as well, Priyanka, is that I share, and thank you for sharing this example. We want to use these examples to help understand, we don't have all the reasons for cause and effect right now, what happened, what didn't happen, but at least we can use this information to improve our own process within our organization. So this is a great way of learning from each other. So I would say thank you for sharing that. Anything else comes to your mind that has been a major, major issue in our industry?
Oh, yes. I mean, everyone is aware of the PIP implant, and and everyone, like, it was such a huge scandal, like in 2000s, like in 2000, yeah, long ago,
Yeah, quite a while ago. Yeah.
where approximately like 400 women across more than 60 countries were affected.
Yeah.
So there was a French, like everyone knows about it, there was a French company who was making these implants, and instead of using medical grade silicone material, they were
Yes.
using like industrial grade silicone, which were used. Which were supposed to be used in products like mattresses and all. So, but
Wow.
what
Uh-huh.
was what was happening is like after implantation there was a high risk, like 6 times more likelihood of rupturing, and there was a worst case patient where both the implants ruptured inside the patient's body. It led to release of silicone, causing inflammation, pain, and many other health complications, even though this was not linked to any kind of cancer or carcinogenic effect. But
Mhm.
still, it had like huge impact on women health, and yeah, it
Mhm.
was a huge risk to the
Yeah,
patients.
yeah. And my understanding is that this was one of the reasons why we have EUMDR today. And that EUMDR is a lot more rigorous from a regulatory point of view than any other regulation that I'm aware of. And it seems to me that incidents like this in our industry are driving increased regulatory oversight, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So bottom line is this is important. This is important from safety point of view, and it should be part of our conversations about risk analysis early on in the product development cycle. So on that note, have you come across, Priyanka, any best practices in your career? Have you come across something that you said, wow, this is really a best practice for biological evaluation?
Yes, so I have worked with some companies that they have amazing quality system implemented according to ISO standard. They are verifying and they're doing like VNV testing, like
Mhm.
extensive intensive VNV testing. They are keeping tab on their materials, like from like the suppliers, if they are medical grade or not. So this is also something which we commonly use, like medical grade. There's nothing, no term anywhere written in FDA's guidance document or in
Mhm.
ISO 93-1 standard that something is medical grade. So this is a term which has been used, but it is nothing which has any substantial meaning. Sorry to use the term in in this
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah, but yeah, so these companies, like, they are designing and manufacturing their products by considering all the risks into account, also taking into consideration the foreseeable misuse. Well, if there are any residual risks, they are putting it on label, IFUs, any documents which can be available to the patient. And this is also one thing which is different in EU and FDA, is
Mhm.
that in EU, the notified bodies are very particular about the hazardous chemicals which are used in the manufacturing of the device.
Mhm.
Hazardous chemicals present in the materials or manufacturing processes, which also includes packaging. So
Yeah.
everything. There are some companies who I'm working with in EU and in US. They have their amazing quality system in place and
Mhm.
documentation system in place. So,
Oh,
yeah.
so I want to make sure that we don't lose the last point you made is if
Mhm.
we are using some chemicals as processing agents or processing aids that are not actually part of the device, we still have to think about biocompatibility,
Yeah.
potential biocompatibility related issues, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
this relates directly to my personal experience where I worked at a leading manufacturer of contact lenses. And these contact lenses are packaged in a solution.
Yes.
And part of the processing aid that was being used at that time was not completely removed from the
Mhm.
process. And that caused some issues in the field. So, this is actually a very good point to
Mhm.
keep in mind that it's not always the materials directly involved in the final medical device, but also chemicals and other agents that come in contact with your medical device during the manufacturing process, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
in our risk analysis, we have to be very careful about including those aspects of the manufacturing process. And I would expect to see a sort of a tight link between design FMEAs and process FMEAs. Have you seen that in practice,
Yes.
Priyanka, in your work?
Yes, yes, yes. So while I was working back in Germany, so I also have to say something like you introduced in your introduction, you said that I have 20 years of experience, but I would say that I have been in this device company for the past 8.5 years. So
Okay.
before that, I have research experience, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So when I was working in Germany with my previous company, I was working with my engineers. They were R&D and manufacturing engineers and the processing engineers. And I have seen that when the processes are so processes definitely have a major impact on the design and the materials property. So each material have their own properties and they cannot stand a certain beyond a certain amount of temperature and pressure and humidity. They start degrading and everything. So you have so the processes that we are using, for example, to make a tubing system in a way that the polymers, how to say, the temperature and pressure should not be above their melting points, boiling points, or such kind of important criteria. So yes, processing and designing, they go hand in hand together. They have to.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And I can lean on my experience in the plastics industry. Anything that is out there, tubings or materials, they have other components in them, like, solvents or plasticizers and other small molecules that may be present in a residual form. And your manufacturing operation should not, bring them to the surface or expose them. Now, Roger is sharing another very good point here is that you can take a reference sample of all those chemicals. This can be used if chemical contamination shows up in a product cleaning validation. So, again, great point. Thank you for sharing, Roger. Priyanka, time flies. We are already at the end of our 30 minutes pretty much. So, I want to thank you first, but give you maybe 2 or 3 minutes to think about some key takeaway points that we can share with our audience today. And in the meantime, guys, I want to share with you a couple of announcements. The first one is that next week we're going to have a very, very interesting conversation with Dr. Quinita Fernandez. We're going to talk about best practices for clinical literature review and building a story for evidence-based story for clinical evaluation of your medical device. So if you're interested in this topic, please show up. The announcement has already gone out. The second announcement I want to share with you is many people have reached out to me one on one expressing that it is very difficult for them to find the announcement for these events. And guys, first of all, I want to apologize to you. LinkedIn has made it very, very hard. And the only way I can announce these events is by publishing them as events and inviting people. So I invite as many people as I can. But the best way to make sure you get information about these events is to register for these events when they show up in your feed or reach out to me. Hey, when is the next event? What is going on? And how can I attend? So there's a little bit of a problem in communication here, but I hope you will hang in there. Good news is that we meet every Friday at 11 Eastern, and you can block your calendar and make sure you show up. So next week's conversation is going to be very fascinating. Please join us if you can. The last announcement I want to share with you is that I have just freshly launched a workshop on FMEAs. You might have heard that FMEA alone is not sufficient for risk analysis under 14971, but there is very little guidance on what else to do. Like what else I can do for my FMEAs to connect them properly to my hazard harm analysis. This is what I teach in this workshop. It's a 4-hour hands on workshop. with a lot of activities. So if you're interested in joining, the next session is coming up soon. Please reach out to me and I'll share with you the information about registration. With that, Priyanka, the floor is yours. If you can please share 2 or 3 key takeaway points.
Sure. So what I would say is that we should have like, so the main theme was on the recall. So what I would say is that we should always have a strong quality control in place, which is in compliance with ISO 13485 standard. We should have always comprehensive risk management in place, which use FMEA, and we should anticipate and design out risk early in the phase of design concept. A thorough testing and validation in place, and we have to have a well-established PMS system, and we should also encourage our provider and patients to give their feedback. And in the end, we should always have an effective communication where clear instructions and warnings are given, and updated IFUs with emerging risks should always be state of the art, state of the art thing. Yeah. So in this way, we can try to provide like as much as we can a safe device which can be used to the patient.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned the post market surveillance because we will learn about what's happening in the field with not only just our device, but also other devices which might be similar from other companies. And we talked about recalls today. We can learn from these issues and incidents in the field and make sure that we are taking all actions necessary early on so that our patients are safe.
Yes.
Ed Bills, you are sharing a comment. Thanks on your insight on this important topic. ISO 10993-1 is a helpful standard we need to understand. Thank you for sharing that. Guys, thank you again for showing up once again and sharing your perspective in this conversation. Thank you, Priyanka, for taking the time to share your insights with us. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best in your practice.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Naveen. And thank you all
Great.
the audiences.
Great. And guys, don't forget next week, we will see you once again.